welcome all to fourth lecture of Indian Economy Series Complete Syllabus at Mushonomics. So in today's class we will be studying theory of demand and supply. So let's start the class. First we will be discussing theory of demand. Theory of demand. Let's see what exactly the demand is. So the question is, what is demand? So demand is nothing but the quantity of a commodity, the quantity of a commodity that an individual is willing to buy, that an individual is willing to buy at a given price, and at a given point of time, right? So this is demand. Let's understand what exactly it is. The quantity of a commodity that an individual is willing to buy at a given price and at a given point of time. Let's take an example, then you will understand, which is also called as law of demand. Let's see what is law of demand then. The law of demand says if price of a commodity changes, then quantity demanded of that commodity changes inversely, keeping all other factors constant. Let's take an example. Let's consider this as price and this as a quantity demanded, right? Quantity demanded. So suppose there is a commodity which is having price of 10 rupees. In 10 rupees, suppose the quantity demanded is 100 rupee, 100 quantity, right? 100 numbers. So in 10 rupees, the quantity demanded is 100. Suppose the price is increasing. So if price will increase, suppose from 10 to 20, then demand will decrease because price is rising. So people will be having less money as compared to the previous situation, right? So when the price is 10 rupees, the quantity demanded was 100. If price has increased from 10 to 20, the demand will decrease, and the demand will decrease, suppose it will decrease to 70, right? So quantity demanded is decreased to 70. Suppose price further increases to 30. So if price is rising from 20 to 30, again the quantity demanded will decrease, for example from 70 to 50. So as price is rising, quantity demand is decreasing. So this is known as what? This is known as law of the demand. Now we can clearly understand the definition of demand: the quantity of a commodity that an individual is willing to buy at a given price and at a given point of time. So after a certain point of time, the price is increasing, so the quantity demanded is decreasing, right? So this is known as law of the demand. Now we will discuss about keeping all other factors constant. So what these factors exactly are? Let's take the example of first example, that is income of a consumer. Income of consumer. Suppose we are talking about normal goods. What do we mean by normal goods? Normal goods, approximately 90 to 95% goods are normal goods only. So these normal goods are the goods which obey law of demand. So we will talk about normal goods. For normal goods, what happens is, if income is increasing, if income increases, then what will happen? If income is increasing, purchasing power will increase, so the demand will increase. So the demand will increase, right? If income decreases, purchasing power decreases, and hence demand will decrease, right? So normal goods obeys what? Law of demand only, right? Okay, let's see for inferior goods. Inferior goods are not necessarily mean the poor quality goods, not necessarily mean poor quality good. Poor quality goods not necessarily mean poor quality goods. For example, if from bike you are moving to car, then bike become what? Inferior good. So not necessarily mean poor quality good. Okay, so let's talk about how it goes with inferior good. So in inferior good, what is happening? If income is increasing, so if income is increasing, you are moving towards superior good, so demand for inferior good will what? Decrease. Demand for inferior good will decrease, right? And if your income is decreasing, so you are moving from superior to inferior, then your demand will increase. Right? So it is for inferior goods that if income is increasing, the demand will decrease, and if income is decreasing, the demand will increase, or the demand will rise. Okay, so this is the first thing, income of a consumer. Now let's see second factor, that is price of related goods. Now what? So we will classify related goods as two part. Number one is substitute good, and number two is complementary goods. So first we will talk about substitute goods. What do we mean by substitute good? So first let's understand what is substitute good. All those goods which can be used in place of one another. What do we mean by this? For example, tea and coffee. If we are taking tea can be replaced by coffee, or for example, Coke and Pepsi. So these are what? Substitute good. You can substitute one good with another good, right? So how the law of demand work here? For example, if price of substitute good rises, price of substitute good rises. For example, price of Pepsi, or for example, price of tea rises. Price of tea, if price of tea rises, then demand for given commodity, here, if substitute good is Pepsi, substitute good is tea, then given commodity will be what? Coffee. So demand, quantity demanded for coffee will decrease. Quantity demand for coffee will decrease, right? Then demand for given commodity increases. Let's see how it happens first. See, suppose price of tea is rising. So what will happen? Demand of tea will decrease. Demand of tea will decrease. So price of tea is rising, then demand of tea will decrease. Then demand of coffee will increase. Demand of coffee, because tea can be substituted by coffee, so demand of coffee will increase, right? Similar way, we can understand similarly, if price of substitute good decreases, then demand for given commodity decreases. So how it happens? For example, price of tea is decreasing. So if price of tea is decreasing, then demand for tea will increase. Demand for tea will increase. If demand for tea is increasing, then demand for coffee will decrease. Demand for coffee will decrease, because coffee will be substituted by tea, right? So this is one point where we talk about substitute good. Fine. Where we talk about substitute good. Okay, let's come to another part, that is complementary good. This is substitute good. Let's come to second part, that is complementary good. So first, let's understand what is complementary goods. Complementary goods are all those goods which have to be used together, to satisfy a given requirement. This is known as what? This is known as complementary good. For example, bread and butter, or tea and sugar, etc. These are the example of complementary good. If you are using bread, you are using butter together. If you are using tea, you are using sugar with it, right? So this is the example of what? Complementary goods. Now let us see how law of demand works here. Complementary goods. So if price of complementary good, if price of complementary good increases, for example, here if we can talk about price, okay, we will talk about it, we will try to understand it later. So if price of complementary good increases, then demand for given commodity decreases. Given commodity decreases. So how it happens? For example, if suppose demand for tea, so demand for tea is, or not demand, what we can say here, price. If price of tea is increasing, so what will happen? Demand for tea will decrease. Right? So what will happen? Automatically demand for sugar will also decrease. Because sugar is being used along with tea. So if the demand of tea is declining, surely the demand of sugar will also decline, right? Similarly, if price of complements or complementary good decreases, then demand for given commodity increases, right? So suppose if price of tea decreases, what will happen? Demand for tea will increase. If demand for tea is increasing, then surely the demand for sugar will also increase, right? So this is what we can say about price of related goods. So price of related goods, we talk about substitute goods as well as we talked about complementary goods. Now we will talk about, third, we will talk about taste and preferences of the consumer. Taste and preferences of the consumer. Taste and preferences of the consumer. So here we can talk about, for example, if price or if preferences shift towards the commodity or goods, towards the commodity, then demand increases. For example, if people are preferring denim over cotton, so the denim will increase. Fashion changes, for example, and the demand for denim increases, and people are moving towards denim, then the demand for cotton will decrease, right? Or for example, people are demanding brown rice, so the demand will shift from white rice to brown rice. Or for example, green tea. So if taste and preferences are favoring or the demand is preferences are shifting towards green tea, then demand will shift from black tea to green tea, right? So this is how, if preferences are shifting in favor of a commodity, then demand will increase. Similarly, if preferences shifts away from the commodity, then demand decreases. Right? So if for example, these preferences are shifting away from black tea, so the demand will decrease. Shifting away from white rice, then the demand for white rice will decrease, right? Having understood all this, now let us plot a demand curve to get a more clear understanding of the picture. Okay, suppose this is price and this is quantity demanded, right? Suppose the at price rupees 10, the quantity demanded is 0. If price is declining from 10, it becomes 8, then demand increases. Then again price is declining from 8, it becomes 5. So the quantity will increase again and it becomes 10. So how we can plot this graph? This plotting of graph etc. is not mandatory for the exam, but just for clear understanding of what we are trying to convey the idea. So for example, at 0, this is price, y-axis price, and x-axis, that is we take quantity demanded, right? Okay, let's plot a graph. At price when quantity is 0, price is 10. So when price is 10, quantity is 0. So this is our first point, 0, 10. Now if price is declining and price become 8, quantity becomes 2. When price become 8, quantity becomes 2 units. Now when we talk about the price is declining further and price is becoming 5, the quantity is becoming 10, right? So if we join these 3 points, then we will get the demand curve that we are talking about. So we will get the demand curve. We are getting the demand curve. So this is the demand curve, right? This is the demand curve. So it is represented by DD. It is our demand curve, right? Okay, now suppose this statement we have to understand that when demand changes due to change in price, of the commodity, when demand changes due to change in price of the commodity, then it results in movement along the curve, What do we mean by movement along the curve? See, you are moving on the curve itself, right? The curve is not shifting anywhere. You are moving along the curve only, from here to here, from here to here. So may price becomes anything between these points, you will be moving along the curve only, as far as the relation we are having with price versus quantity, right? Quantity demanded. So that means if price is increasing, quantity demand decreasing, and this is known as, if we are moving along the curve only, along the demand curve only, this is known as contraction of demand. Just for prelims purpose, we are discussing these things, the terminologies that can be asked, right? So if we are moving along the curve, then the price is increasing, quantity demand will decrease. This is known as contraction of demand. Similar way, if price is decreasing, then quantity demand increasing, it is known as expansion of demand. It is known as expansion of demand. Understood? Okay. So this is contraction of demand and expansion of demand when we are moving along the curve. Now let's take another example. Suppose I am drawing a curve. First I will plot the graph, price, quantity demanded. Suppose this is 10, this is 5, this is 2. I am taking random values, 100, 200 and 300 for example, right? I will plot a demand curve here. Okay, so for price 10, 5 and 2. So for 10 it is quantity demand is 100, 200 and then 300, right? So my first point will be this, my second point will be this, and my third point will be this, right? So I have drawn a demand curve like this. Okay, now suppose here the income of consumer was 1 lakh, right? 1 lakh rupees. And now suppose income has increased. So if income of consumer increased to rupees 2 lakh, what will happen? You see, now for the same price, now price is not changing, for the same price quantity demand will increase, right? Quantity demand will increase. So it is same, the price will remain same, 10, 5 and 2, but the quantity demand may increase. For example, I will make it 150, 300 and 400. So what will happen? You see, now this at 10 rupees it will be 150, it will be 150. At 5 rupees it will be 300, this 300, and it will be 400 for this. So this point will become here, this point will become here, right? So this will be my new demand curve. This will be my new demand curve, right? Are we able to understand? Now see, we are not moving along the curve. We are not moving along the curve. Rather, we are moving, our demand curve is getting shift. Our demand curve is getting shift. As we can see here clearly, our demand curve is getting shift towards right by change in income, right? By change in income. Similarly, so what we can say is, what we can say here, as income increased, as income increased, demand increased at same price. Demand increased at same price. Demand increased at same price. Then what happens? Demand curve shifts. Demand curve shifts to the right. Demand curve shifts to the right. Similarly, if income would have decreased, for example, in this diagram, this is for income 2 lakh and this is for income 1 lakh. So if income is decreasing, then the demand curve will shift towards left, right? Then the demand curve will shift towards left. I hope this point is clear. So similarly, as income decreases, demand decreases, and demand curve shift to the left. Demand curve shift to the left. Now very important point you have to understand here is, when factors, or this is an important point, when factors other than price, affect the demand, it results in shifting demand curve. It results in shifting the demand curve to the right. And this phenomena, shifting the demand curve to the right, this phenomena is known as what? This phenomena is known as, shifting the demand curve to the right, this phenomena is known as increase in demand. Right? And shifting demand curve to the right and it results in shifting demand curve to the right and shifting the demand curve to the left. And when it is shifting demand curve to the left, it will be known as what? Decrease in demand. It will be known as decrease in demand. Right? So we have talked about this, that when demand is increasing or decreasing due to price change, it is known as what? The movement will be along the curve and it will be either contraction of demand or expansion of demand. But if demand is changing not because of price but the factors other than price that we have discussed, so it will be known as what? Shifting the demand curve. It will be shift in demand curve, not moving along the curve, and it will be called as increase in demand or decrease in demand. Whatever we have discussed so far, it is everything is related to normal goods. Everything is related to normal goods. They are not related to, for example, giffen goods. Giffen goods are very poor quality, very poor. These are exceptions. These are exceptions. Giffen goods. Number one, giffen goods. Giffen good is what? Very poor quality of inferior good. Very poor quality of inferior goods. Right? So law of demand doesn't apply. Law of demand does not apply. Right? For example, there is a very poor quality of rice. So what will happen if the price will decrease further? What you will do? You will leave that that rice, or you will decrease your demand. For example, if there is a rice of rupees 5 per kg and you are having demand of 20 kg in a month, 20 kg in a month, so you are spending 100 rupees, right? Suppose if price decreases and it becomes rupees 2 per kg, rupees 2 per kg, then what you will do? You will decrease the consumption and you will demand only, for example, 15 kg, and you will be spending only rupees 30, and the rupees 70 whatever you have saved, you can use it for other food grains. For example, you can buy pulses and other food grains from it, right? So you will decrease the demand. Like that, if it is for very poor quality of inferior good, that is known as giffen good. Same goes with Veblen good also. So Veblen good is what? Super rich good. Super rich, which attracts the rich, for example diamond, etc. So why these goods are being purchased? Because rich are getting a kind of status, right? So rich are getting attracted to these things. If the price will fall, if price will decrease, then demand will also decrease, because now it will not attract rich people, right? So this is how the Veblen goods are. So demand and supply, uh, this is what about demand that we have discussed. We have to discuss supply also, but the lecture will be of longer duration. So today we will stick here, and in the next class we will be discussing the law of supply and equilibrium part. Fine. So I hope these things are clear. Let's revise once before we conclude the class. See, demand is what? The quantity of commodity that an individual is willing to buy at a given price and at a given point of time. Then we discussed about law of demand. If price is increasing, quantity demand will decrease. Then we talked about price is not the only thing which influences the demand of commodity. So we talked about income of consumer. Then we talk about price of related goods, in which we talk about substitute good and complementary good. Then we talked about taste and preferences. Then we talked about movement along the curve and shifting the curve to the right or to the left, right? So I hope this will help you in your preparation. See you in the next class for law of supply. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye.